trying to trace down a little knock on the left hand side of my Stag, and some people have suggested that if the tip of the shock absorber is level with the strut mount, could be an issue. So I did jack up the car, and if you notice, while I mess around with the wheel, I don't know if you can see that, bit difficult to hold with my hand, but there is it. I think it has separated, and this needs to come off and be replaced. Now I've heard the new ones are pretty crappy, so you may want to go to a person called Chris Witter and get his more expensive ones, because everyone who buys the new replacements have problems, and usually it involves some sort of machining. So there is also another company called K-Mac out in Australia, but they're super expensive. You can Google them, or I may put it on my website. But this strut has to come off, and this thing needs to be replaced. It's top mount. Fortunately, I have a couple of old spare ones that I keep. I'll just temporarily, well, not temporarily, I'll replace it with one of those for now. The only concern I have is that both of the heads on the shocks on both turrets are sitting about the same level. If I replace this one with a second-hand good one, it's going to be sitting slightly different, so it may change the ride height of the car, but I'm okay with that. Okay, so I took the strut off. As you can see, I used a very cheap quality spring compressor. This is from Harbor Freight. I've had this maybe for a few years, and I wouldn't, if you're going to do this often, go, nowadays on Amazon you can buy good quality stuff. I only do these once in a while, so these are fine. I do keep an eye on them just in case something happens. Anyway, another thing I would recommend you do is invest in an impact wrench. I had my Stag for 20 years, but probably 5 years ago I bought one of these. It was $24. They're normally $80. And then I wish I had bought one of these when I first bought my Stag. And it's very difficult to get that nut off the end of that shock absorber that sits in there. And I found an impact wrench works well. This is a Spax. I think it is a Spax, because the rear has Spax shocks. There's an Allen. There's a key. You can put an Allen wrench or an Allen socket, Allen key or a thing in there. And so I do apologize with my English, because I was actually born and raised in UK for about 22 years, and I came to America, so now I switch between English and American. So if you're in England, you can get an Allen key. In America, an Allen wrench, but I find that there's no way I can do it. I use an Allen key. So as I took this off, some washers and thrust washer fell out, and this is the interesting thing that I found out, is that there should be two of these thrust washers, and they got a little key on there. There should be one on this side and one on the other side. And I apologize, this tube goes in the middle. Now people ask when they buy new mounts that they get these things, and they're too tight to slide in, but if you look at that, it slides quite well, and that's how it should be. And that also, the problem is, a lot of people say they have to machine something out, and that's another problem. Also, you have, as mentioned, there's a thrust washer, and there's a special key somewhere, there, that goes one on this side, one on the other side, and it stops the up and down movement. So the movement I showed in my first video, it was not because of this is split. It's actually because the previous owner forgot to put in a thrust washer. So fortunately, I never throw anything away, and I have a spare one. I'm gonna go and pick the best ones, measure them with a gauge, and see which is the best ones that I have, and then rebuild it, and hopefully put it back. So hopefully this is a day's fix. I also have I have a few old ones of these from a parts car I parted out, and so I have a handful. I have rebuilt ones that are going in my purple Stag. That's my first Stag. These are actually Monarch Progressive, and they have specs in there. So that's that. This is a continuation of my top mount issue. As I mentioned earlier, I have a couple of these thrust washers. Some of them are worn. I will actually pick the best one, the thickest one that I have. A couple of things here. This is an original mount, and if you notice, this tube thingy actually is slides, and it should rotate inside this tube. As I mentioned, a lot of new ones, they don't. And not only that, is when you put the thrust, not only that, when you put the thrust washer on this end and the actual other washer behind it, and again I apologize, I only have one hand holding my phone, and then you put the other thrust washer on this end and the other washer, there should actually be no up and down movement inside this thing. I think some of the other folks have said that there is a little play, but yeah, this is an original one, and I'm gonna, as I said, choose the best thrust washers I have and just put it back. So this gives you an idea. So in my case, as mentioned earlier in the video, somebody had forgot to misplaced the thrust washer and just left this washer at the bottom, and that's what my play was. So that's it. Oh, by the way, when you put this back on the shock absorber, I still couldn't figure out if it was really important. I'm in California. I never take the car out in the rain because my car looks like a sieve even with the roof on. There's a thing called butyl something. If I'm in America, so there's a thing called butyl. I'll have to give you the name. Someone recommended it's like a mastic type thing that goes on here. In UK, I think people use Dum Dum if they can still get it. But I'll put that around here and then stick it back up in the turret hole. So there you go. Okay, thanks. Bye.